Right now, Senator Diane Feinstein and colleagues on Capitol Hill pushing a new version of the assault weapons ban. But the question is, does this have any chance of passing both House and Senate, or is this already DOA? And next, is stop and frisk on its last legs? A federal judge ruled that the practice is unconstitutional earlier this month, but new battles, they lie ahead for this controversial policing tactic. And later, Junior Seau's family is suing the NFL, alleging the league didn't do enough to protect the former players, including the former linebacker, from head injury that led to a suicide. We'll explain why this could be a huge deal for the future of football as we know it. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French, and thank you so much for joining us this Thursday evening, January 24th. As you heard in the lead there, a lot to get to in the next 60 minutes, so let's get to our first issue, and that centers around the gun debate, which raged yet again today. New battle lines have been drawn on Capitol Hill, and our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, is here to kick it off. Andrew?
Well, Rich, Senator Diane Feinstein said enough is enough today when proposing her newly retooled version of the assault weapons ban. To the side of her were pegboards mounted with various assault rifles and semi-automatic weapons, including a Bushmaster, similar to the one used in last month's Newtown school massacre, as well as the firefighter shooting in Webster, New York. Those weapons are banned in Washington, D.C. The lawmakers had to get special permission just to bring them to the Capitol for the presentation. All in all, Feinstein and her colleagues are proposing a ban on 158 specifically named firearms, and the NRA is already firing back.
Today, my colleagues and I are introducing a bill to prohibit the sale, transfer, manufacture, and importation of assault weapons.
Senator Diane Feinstein and backers of a new gun reform bill introduced today promised they don't want to take guns away from hunters, but their proposal still promises to ignite a firestorm of controversy. It would ban 158 military-style weapons and large magazines that feed more than 10 bullets without having to reload. Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy lost her husband in a shooting on the Long Island Railroad.
If you don't have these guns and the large magazines on the shelves, those that have done these horrific killings wouldn't be able to go into a gun store and just buy them.
The proposal comes 42 days after the shootings at Sandy Hook Elementary, and on the same day, Vice President Biden weighed in on a Google chat.
I don't view it as gun control, I view it as gun safety.
Those backing the bills in Congress say they're specifically protecting 2,200 named guns that hunters and sportsmen can use, nearly 14 times the number they would ban. But the NRA is already pushing back, saying, quote, Senator Feinstein has been trying to ban guns from law-abiding citizens for decades. We are confident Congress will reject her wrong-headed approach. The original assault weapons ban expired in 2004. This proposal would upgrade that ban, as well as outlaw ammunition magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. Rich?
All right, Andrew, thank you very much. I want to bring in our panel on this. Nicolay Damone is the senior pastor of the Family of Faith Full Life Center Church. He lost his own father to gun violence when he was a child, and he's helping organize this weekend's March on Washington for gun control. Thousands expected in our nation's capital. We're also joined by Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, David Webb, radio talk show host and spokesman for the National Tea Party Federation, and Andrew, who you've already met. And Bishop, why don't we try and put a human face in this? Why are you going to brave the cold in Washington? We mentioned you have a personal connection to this, but also through your work, it's not just the spree killings that you hear about on Sundays, but you hear about from some of the laity about stuff that happens, unfortunately, on a daily basis.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me here. And before I say anything else, I just want to make sure that everyone knows we are marching on Saturday, this coming Saturday, in Washington, D.C. And so if you want information about that march, you can go to www.guncontrolmarch.com.
And the Brady campaign is one of the people, in fact, they put us in contact with you. So,
Great.
So put a human face on it for you.
I'm almost 40 years old, and I'm a 40-year-old who doesn't know his father because my father was killed a month after I was born, shot to death, and no reason, mistaken identity at the end of the day is what was stated in that murder. I presided in the last 6 months over 4 funerals of children who were killed by children using guns, 18 to 13 years old. The 13-year-old was sitting on the porch reading a book, He was in the right place at the wrong time. That's why I'm marching. I'm marching because we're losing our children. I'm marching because I'm not safe if you're not safe. And so I felt it necessary to lend whatever my voice is in the area of ministry, and as a performer, I'm also a Broadway performer, and utilizing those gifts that I have to get people to come together to say, look, enough is enough.
And to that point, David, you look at all the polls right now and the 4 core elements that they're talking about: assault weapons ban, but they're also talking about creating a database, background checks, limiting the clips here. Every one of those items, when nationally polled, the majority of Americans, in some cases up to 90% on some of the issues, say enough is enough, let's do more. We'll get to the politics in a second, what can and can't pass, but shouldn't things change after Newtown? Shouldn't there be in this country a right to bear arms, but with limits?
Well, here's the question. One, the Second Amendment ends with shall not be infringed. It does not imply limits on either end. The emotion, and I understand, I've covered this issue for many years, talked to many people who've been involved, victims themselves. The issue is not, and frankly the argument since Newtown was never gun control, it was about the registry from that political point. They talk about magazines. New York passed a law, 7 in the magazine or less, when in fact most murders committed with guns are committed with 3 bullets or less. Less than 1% of the guns used in crimes committed with guns come from gun shows. When you look at the numbers, the issue is not that. An assault rifle is a political term. There is no real such thing as an assault rifle. There is military weaponry and there's that. So
well,
we've got, my point is we've got.
To be fair to you, in the past in '94, and we've had one of the authors of the assault weapons ban that officially passed, there was, it got passed and then there's open debate to what it was and there was modifications, everything else. Today, they laid out specifically not only which guns they wanted to prohibit, but which guns were still allowed. And what was the number, Andrew, that we said?
Something like 2,200.
Right, and it was a fraction of that that wouldn't. I want to get, you mentioned the Second Amendment, because I didn't think after Newtown we would be debating the subject about what the Second Amendment was or wasn't, but Justice Scalia, who I think we'd agree, if you're going to get more conservative, we got to bring up Attila the Hun. Okay, so nobody's going to confuse this guy with some bleeding heart. The most recent ruling, as it related to the Second Amendment, was pretty clear, and he wrote the majority opinion on it. Could we bring up that graphic, guys? Thank you very much. And he said, limitations upon the right to bear arms are permissible. What they are will depend on what the society understood was reasonable limitation. So, for example, he spoke about it. Founding Fathers never intended for bazookas to be in the hands of the general public. Nobody thinks instead of driving a car, you should be able to drive a Sherman tank down the block.
And that's a great emotional argument. But he was also talking about the Heller decision in that, and that applied to Washington, D.C., which, by the way, still has a high rate. So gun control laws.
No. But I want to come back. But 1 second, guys. I don't want to bring the other folks. This Second Amendment, I believe, is a canard. Nobody has talked about taking away a person's right to bear arms. They've been talking about certain guns, certain people shouldn't have them,
you're right,
and also certain capacities of the guns. But no one says somebody can't have a right to bear arms. So why are we talking about like the government's going to kick your door down, not you, but others, and go take your guns away in the dead of night? No one's even proposing that, let alone
because
that's not on the table.
On both sides, the wrong debate is being had. And it's not about gun control. There have been, and you talk about Chicago. Chicago is a great example of failure with gun control laws. They managed to zone out at the local levels because no one's going to overturn the Second Amendment. There is the dirty little secret. Not even Democrats will go along with that. They're not going to do that. So they will impede your ability to exercise your Second Amendment right. The argument of no one should drive a tank or a bazooka, that's been addressed. There's a difference between military use weapons and weapons.
With all due respect, I've had on Larry Pratt, who you probably know,
who's
from
Gun Owners of America.
Okay, he believes that a person should be able to own a bazooka because the government, he believes here, you have to be ready to protect yourself from the government.
He's entitled to his belief. I'm not Larry Pratt, and I won't speak for Larry, but I will speak to the issue rather than even just for myself.
I want to bring in these two guys, though, because Andrew, for me, here's where the nub's at. After 40-some-odd days of talking about this with people on both sides of the issue, if anything, they're farther apart than when we started. the polls say one thing, but politically, not just Republicans who fear a primary if they vote for any of this, but even some Democrats say, you know, I'm going to have a problem here if I go for this, if I'm a senator in West Virginia, if I'm a senator in Nevada, if I'm a senator in a red state here, or even some tint of it. Is this thing at best going to turn into something piecemeal, even though the president and today lawmakers want to make this an all or nothing proposition?
Honestly, I think at this point you'd be lucky to get piecemeal. I mean, I think there are going to be serious objections to every piece of legislation that goes forward. I'm not all that optimistic that there will be any legislation that gets through Congress. I wish it weren't the case, and we can certainly debate the merits of it. But no, I don't see the political. Sands shifting that much. There are still votes to be had. There is still public opinion to be swayed. I don't see that being done very well.
Andrew's point, Dominic, Senator Feinstein said, listen, the only way this is going to pass if you, the people out there, demand it. But she did say one other thing. And she had behind her cops. I know every major police organization supports this proposal, okay? She had behind her victims, like the bishop over here who can speak firsthand to it. But she also said there's going to be the report that's going to come out from Newtown, and they've already seen some of the details. And apparently, the graphic nature of what this Bushmaster did to these 26-year-olds, where it riddled them with so many bullets they were all but unrecognizable here, she believes in others, will make the public think that, wait a second here, if it was my kid, we can do better than this. Is there a chance that the public opinion can still be swayed at this point?
Yes, and it all comes down to, in my opinion, Newtown. I understand Andrew's point of view, but I'm not that pessimistic about this. I am telling you, this president is talking about his legacy. Yeah. He is in the final 4 years of his tenure, and I am telling you, don't write this guy off yet. I understand it's a huge obstacle to say that there's going to be a weapons ban, an assault weapons ban, and we could argue all day on what is an assault weapon and what is not an assault weapon. I say go ask the kids of Chicago and New York City where their parents are crying right now because they're not here. How do you define an assault weapon? You know, there will be some type of ban.
That's a great emotional argument, but let's look at the facts over the years and even the time that the assault weapon ban was in progress. 41 million more Americans own guns than when it started.
I'll save you time. Most people think that it was largely inefficient. However, the point that everybody makes is if you're going to have a ban, it can't be with modifications and opt-outs, and you can't have one state do one thing like New York and then a neighboring state do something else. If you don't have all 50 states looped in.
But then what do you do about handguns? In Virginia, Techie used a handgun. 32 people were killed.
No.
It's not the weapon, it's the people.
I guess my only point to be an open-ended question, and I know there's no simple answers, but since Newtown, more than 1,000 Americans have died at the end of a gun. And I just say definitively, as a nation, we can do better than just saying, let's get more guns out there.
How do you stop criminals from committing a crime when they don't follow the laws in place? Like in Chicago, Connecticut, the gun control laws in Connecticut work.
It's not all criminals.
Adam Lanza was unable to buy in Connecticut because the fourth strongest laws in the nation worked. He committed a crime. Then he committed more crimes.
What about, would we, maybe another night, but we can have a conversation? Maybe his mom should have been required to have
His mom's culpable. His mom's culpable in this crime.
Dead, okay? But my point is, she should have had trigger locks. Maybe we have smart guns, or if you want to buy a gun, you yourself have to be accountable for it, and only you can use it. I mean, we have possibilities other than pulling guns, but every step of the way, one side always says, no, nothing.
I say at the
except
end,
more guns.
I say at the end of the day, I mean, politics is politics. At the end of the day, there's an empty seat at the table. We can emotionalize, we can say it's being emotional. There's thousands of empty seats at the table.
But what does the law do to stop that?
I can't even.
Tell me what law is going to stop Chicago from happening.
Here's my hope. Here's more than 500.
More than 500
and here's my hope.
Reported last year.
Here's my hope. My hope is that we can get beyond what's politically expedient. If
That's not going to help.
Well, this isn't about politics.
As long as money is in politics,
I got to go to break. If the issue is, how do we go from 1,000 to 0, we're never going to go
You're never going to go there.
So you got to take an incremental approach, which is what,
over
to be fair.
50 years, the FBI reports gun violence has trended down in this country significantly.
We're going to jump to a break here.
It's not gun control.
David, we we can all agree we can do better than where we are right now. We're going to turn to the issue of another contentious issue, and it's right here in our region, the issue of stop and frisk, the policing tactic that has its supporters, but it sure has a heck of a lot of opponents too. Could it be on its last legs? And there's issues both at the court and possibly as to who is the next mayor that will decide this. A federal judge ruled the practice unconstitutional, but new battles, they lie ahead. We'll be back with more on that after this.